I do, my investigating style is a little bit different to Whitney. So Whitney does kind of like goes deep diving into all of the information and collects it all together and in a way that people can actually digest, which people don't understand quite how rare an ability that is. But you know me, I tend to like to go time traveling, and some of my investigations go on for a long time. So I've got about like, I got a couple of investigations I can't probably, one that I'll be able to talk about very soon, which is possibly one of the most interesting ones I've done in a long time. Even I found it more interesting than Schwab stuff, because that was like kind of, you know,
and because you're a consummate professional, you're going to tease that article.
Oh, I am going to tease that article. I'll tell you in a little bit, but I mean, we had the Edelman. I had the Edelman piece come out. So the Edelman piece was basically that was another one where it was obvious I had to write something about Edelman and how much power and control they had over the media voices. And how they get their message and how they use their messages, where they come from. I knew that it would all be an interesting story, an interesting article, but it was only once I put all of the information together and wrote an article that I realized I just had to chop half the article away. All of the I automatically go into family history every single time because it's really interesting. And the person who runs Edelman PR, for people who don't know, Edelman PR own like basically 2/3 of the PR market in the whole world. So that's like really massive. That's monopoly size of saying that we need to get a message out. This company hires Edelman, they'll get the message out all over the place. So they got loads of different tactics for doing that. They've got loads of different ways. This article really focused in on how they flood the zone. So how when information in event 201, Matthew Harrington, who's Edelman PR, was sitting on the event. And he talks about flooding the zone, saying that basically if you once what they call false information and misinformation, which is for them information they don't want into the mainstream, once a cat is out of the bag, there's no going back on it. It's, you know, it's done. The cat's out of the bag. So the only way to effectively stop the message from getting out there, these other voices from getting out there, is to flood the zone with information, repeating the same stuff over and over again. So when you look into that method, you soon realize that it's obviously a form of brainwashing, because what you're doing is not allowing competitive voices. We're no longer in a place where you can make informed choices and decisions. You just take, with that technique, it scoops it all up, it takes it away. And it's what they do on a lot of things. I mean, this is what mainstream media work on, is flooding the zone. So one message comes into the two agency at the top, like I know Associated Press and Reuters, maybe they're the top two. And that message comes from somewhere and then trickles down and remains basically the same as it gets through all of the TV stations, all of the different things which are owned by just a couple of people. Now, these people create that message at the start. Edelman creates that message. And if you go back in time, you discover his father was military psyops during World War II. So looking at propaganda, how to use propaganda against the Germans well, how to basically military grade propaganda. So when he got out of doing war stuff, the first thing he's thinking is, what shall I do? Maybe I should go into propaganda. You know, this is how it does. A lot of the people who go to fight for a supposedly good cause, I mean, I start to doubt anything in the past was necessarily a good a cause as they make it out to be. But when they go and do something for a good cause, they often come back and be the enemy. You know, they pick up the traits, they see them and they say, oh, those are convenient ways. And even though we could beat them, because we know how to beat them, we can also know how to seal them up, make them really powerful, make these techniques really powerful to make people bend to our will, make people do the things they want to do. So COVID, it was straight away what we saw and what we've stopped seeing about 2-3 months ago was people like Bill Gates and Fauci and stuff constantly on every single channel, constantly saying the same things over and over again, everything giving you the same information, lots of different news outlets reporting and repeating the same things over and over again, and not allowing anything else to breathe. And of course, censoring all of the other platforms that did have already a big enough following for them to be worried about. And if you noticed in the past, like about 3 months ago, that technique stopped for a small amount of time. It stopped for this flooding the zone. They withdrew all of those big faces. You saw less of Fauci, you saw less of Gates. I think that's got less to do with his divorce, and it's got to do with the fact of this is how PR works. This is how they do it. So you see less of these big figures, you hear less of these other news. And what they do is they seed in other information that they're ready, because you have to seed in the information if you're going to flood the zone. You have to already seed it, and you have to get people prepared for the flood to come, so they're susceptible and they're not all just suddenly like, wait, where did all of this stuff come from all of a sudden? You know, you know who's telling the truth, or you don't know who's telling the truth. These guys are going to make you think that there's only one version of events, you know. So it's really important to do an article on Edelman.
No, you're absolutely right. And it is, I'm glad you brought up narrative seeding, because this is something that I don't even know if we allude to it on the show, and it gets, you know, sort of brought back up just when we have recurring guests like you, or like Whitney, because of, you know, the stuff that we talk about, unfortunately, almost exclusively, you know, where, for example, pre-crime, like this show, maybe a handful of others, and Whitney, and that was it. We were screaming about pre-crime since the summer of 2019, when it had become evident through Mike Pompeo's words, through Donald Trump's words, and through some very, very handy back-to-back mass shootings. We were, you know, given the like flat out admission that yes, the Department of Justice is going to be coming forward with a pre-crime division, and it's going live January 1st, 2021. We had a year and a half, Johnny, of being able to, you know, encourage people to like, hey, dude, your social media is going to be used against you in federal court under domestic terrorism charges if you don't find a different way to say this, or a better way to organize, or start fucking encouraging, you know, using encryption for everyone for every reason. Not just activists, not just organizers, not just criminals.
I think what we saw for the years before coronavirus, 2019 time, was there was a lot of winding down of the old narratives, them giving it up, and sometimes actually the different parts of the establishment, I'll give you an example to this, different parts of the establishment accepting the crimes they'd done before, and then acting like, now we're on a new foot, this is a new generation, we got this whole new reset, you know, and it's what it's become. But that's always what it was. It was always going to be some sort of idea. It's not really a reset of the way we work in things. It's a reset of responsibility and culpability for the crimes that have been committed before that they're then going to admit to. That's part of the reset. And for instance, there was a movie. It was called something like The Day Shall Come, something along those lines. It's written by a very, very funny guy called Chris Morris in the UK, who is a very good comedian. But also it's a suspiciously seeding a narrative, because it basically admitted in a comedy movie, listen, FBI are the biggest recruiters of terrorists in the history of America. over the past 15, 20 years, nearly every single terrorist event has been due to funding and organization by the FBI trying to force someone to commit a crime by manipulating and coercing them into the crime so they can get the figures up, they get the stats up, they can look like they're doing something wrong. Now, for them to just be able to say that now, for a comedian just to be able to say, oh, well, this is normal, and a Channel 4 interviewer to go, yeah, it's amazing what you've come out with, we've been saying this stuff for ages and ages, and we were conspiracy theorist loons. But then when you see an establishment figure, someone like Chris Morris, who's a brilliant comedian and everything, but he's always been top place in some of the Channel 4 networks and the big networks, a fairly free establishment figure coming out and then seeding this. Look, the past is gone, it's old. It's no longer there. This is a new thing that we're entering onto now. That there's loads of instances where that had been happening for about 3 years before the coronavirus stuff come out. They've been aware very well that they're going to start just admitting to things in the past. I think that's why the Jeffrey Epstein thing, they said we have to draw a line under it, and we have to arrest him again, and we got to just, well, whoever did that. But the majority of it is like, oh, we have to draw a line under the crimes that we've done at the past so that we're no longer culpable for them in the future. That's how they see it. They don't feel themselves responsible because, of course, democracy is like a 5-year rolling sham or 4-year rolling sham, depending which country you are in, where it's just like, there is no accountability and responsibility. Someone does something in power, or you can vote them out after 4 or 5 years. Well, you can't. Only their constituency or their area, their region can vote them out, and that's only if you can get over the identity politics that are on the ground due to the candidates that are running, and it becomes so stupid. It's obviously gerrymandered, it's obviously all fake. All of that system, they're gonna start saying, yeah, or everything you said about it was right, but what you're saying now is a conspiracy theory. Even though before it was all of this stuff was a conspiracy theory, and if you and this is a conspiracy theory, now that you're going to hear them start to say no. Yeah, that's how it was in the past, but this is a reset now. This is a new time